All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Geek Garage podcast. I am your host, as always, David Dassaw, and joined with me, as per usual, is my good friend Ted White. How are you doing, good sir?
Hey, what's up, David?
That was
What?
I don't know. That was just short and brief and abrupt. But
Okay, well, let's try it again. Pitch it back to me.
hey, Ted, how you doing?
Nah, I got nothing. Let's stick with the original.
All right. Well, we'll stick with the original. How's your week been so far?
Well, I'm over the sickness that I talked about on the last episode.
Oh wow!
I'm still down with that sickness, believe me.
Yeah, that sickness never leaves. No one's breaking that fever.
25 long years of that.
Yeah.
So I'm over that. My allergies are not bothering me as much. I'm starting to, I'm getting my springtime armor, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
The time change fucked with me. I forgot about it.
Yeah.
And I woke up and I was like, wow, I slept a long time. No, I didn't. Fuck you, time.
Yeah, I actually, with the time change, not only did I lose an hour like everyone else that is subject to daylight savings time spring forward, but I ended up sleeping in, or not sleeping in. I woke up an hour earlier than usual because I was suffering from seasonal allergies, and my body was just like, no, fuck you, David. Like, you're not going to get any goddamn
You want nice
sleep.
things? Wrong.
Yeah, so, but I, like you, have experienced a slight lifting of my seasonal allergies here in the last couple of days, which is great because seasonal allergies blow and they're nothing to fuck with in the South. So,
That
yeah,
is true.
yeah, that's always a good thing. But alas, seasonal allergies are not what we're here to talk about today. What we are here to talk about is one of you and I's favorite monsters, I guess.
Yeah, creature feature.
Yeah, and that is Mr. King Kong himself. You excited about
Yes.
this?
Yeah, I mean, I love King Kong. Going back to when I was a kid, I mean, obviously, growing up 60, 50 or 60 years after the movie came out originally, King Kong was already firmly in the cultural bedstone at that point, of course. So,
Right.
I can't really remember a time when I wasn't aware of King Kong. And I think, like all kids, I was super into like dinosaurs and creatures. So,
Right.
seeing the movie for the first time, I was just like, whoa. And I just never really grew out of that. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, same. I King Kong and Godzilla, which of course we will get to. They were
Definitely.
definitely ingrained in my childhood. Just like you said, I was the same goes for me. Like my childhood was all like your prototypical boy stuff, as far as like
Right.
the things you're interested in, minus like the sports stuff. I just that I could never really get into. I tried, but I am just not an athletic person, and I think I found that out really early on. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stick to like my
Play your
wrestling.
strengths.
Yeah, play to my strengths. I'm gonna stick with like my WWF wrestling action figures and like my Godzilla and King Kong action figures and my Power Rangers. I had a lot of action figures growing up.
I could tell.
But yeah, I don't know where they all went. I think my parents just one day while I was at school, they were like, "Ha yeet them into the sun." And I came home and I was like, "Where's that?" And they're like,
You're a man now. Deal with it.
Yeah, it's
It was like the Catholic version of a bar mitzvah.
right. Yeah, minus the
Yeah, minus the Hava Nagila. And,
yeah, and lifting me up
a
in
few
chair.
changes, but
Right, but for the most part, still plenty
essentially,
of bats.
though, the same.
Right. And I did rock some sideburns, so that's that was a thing.
Hmm.
But anyways, God, we are really great at getting off track and right off the
That's
bat.
all we're good at, in fact.
So yeah, we like I said, we're here to talk about King Kong. I'm excited, Ted. I know you're excited. Um, we've kind of been putting this out there for the last couple of episodes. Just a thank you to our current subscribers, and if you're a new listener of the podcast, welcome. Thank you so much for choosing our podcast as one
And
to
prepare to
listen
be
to.
let down.
Right. Well, we will do our best to rise to the level of mediocrity, to the point where you're like, well, that wasn't an hour wasted. It
It wasn't
wasn't
an hour gained, but
right. I didn't gain anything. However, nothing was lost.
they are pleasant enough. Like,
Right, like our goal is to make you get to that point at the end where that scene from Billy Madison isn't running through your head, where he's like, what you just said is beyond the dumbest thing that I've ever heard in my entire life. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having to listen to it. Therefore, I award you no points. May God have mercy on your soul. Like, that's our goal, is to hope
to
that
avoid that if at all
right.
possible. Yeah.
Yes. Um but yeah, I think we'll try and keep our intro short for this episode.
We're doing a great job so far.
Right. Let's see. Let's sugar. Hey, no, our intro time is at like 7 minutes and some seconds. So, um,
A new
what?
personal best.
Right. Shall we hit the intro music and get the show on the road?
Yes,
All right.
indeed.
Let us do just that. Boop. All right, so Ted, before we get started on talking about some King Kong and his future films, you want to go over the Facebook poll?
Yeah, that seems like a good enough place to start.
Yeah, it's usually when we do it, right at the top. So our Facebook poll this week was simply, what's your favorite King Kong film? Easy enough. And I'm excited to say that no punches were thrown and no
A
insults.
new personal best.
Right, no insults were hurled, which is also great. However, I the results we got, I was expecting. I don't know how Ted was expecting the results, but he was definitely, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but slightly disappointed. I think was
Um, I don't know if disappointed is the right word. To be disappointed, you have to have expectations. So I don't.
well, that's fair.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah,
Let,
Kong
let
Skull Island won.
yeah,
You know,
let's go over and we
let's
can
just go
talk a
ahead,
little bit. Yeah, so I threw out. I gave everyone the option to add films if they wanted to, but I mainly included. I included the main ones, the ones that everyone's aware of, for the most part. So obviously, the 1933 original, the 1976 remake of that original, Peter Jackson's 2005 reboot, I think is what it's technically, and I put the Sung Up Kong on there, which I think came out several years after the original, and
Mhm.
then of course Kong Skull Island. The one choice that I did not add, which happens to be the only choice that was added by a listener, was never seen a King Kong film. And I was like, oh
Which
yeah.
why are you voting? Why? This obviously isn't for you, man.
No, but it's cool. Like, I mean, monster movies aren't everyone's thing. It
No, that's yeah. I mean,
doesn't have to be
I'm
everyone's thing, but
just goofing.
yeah.
Poll question goofing.
Right. So yeah, Ted, like you said, Kong Skull Island won. It got the most votes.
Pretty
Um,
handily, also.
yeah,
Kind of a runaway.
which isn't super surprising. You know, most of our audience is either our age or younger. So I feel like most of them will just identify and get more enjoyment out of Skull
It's
Island.
it's the most recent one, and it probably is the one that most people have seen. You're right. So
Right.
I think it kind of won by default in some
Mm-hmm.
ways. It's I don't have anything against the movie. I think I had a lot of fun when I was seeing it, but I don't know that it's not what I would have voted for. I'll put it that way, but it doesn't matter.
Sure. Well, if you had a Facebook account, you could have voted.
Yeah, but no, the pros outweighed by the cons.
I'm telling you, man, just just set one up, set it with like the highest security or privacy settings, and you just get on there
Use a fake name.
to right, yeah, some pseudonym, just get on
Dave
there to
Sabidi.
what was that?
Dave Sabidi. That's my alter ego, my fake name.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
Well, yeah, use that and then just get on there to vote on polls.
Okay. Da- Dave is not the poll voting kind of person, but that's all right. That's not.
He's the poll writing kind of person. Hey,
I've already I've already said too much.
I was never given a
But no,
name.
I mean, I was like I said, Skull Island's a good movie. And it's in the grand scheme of things, does it matter who's what the choices or what the ultimate choice of this poll was? Not really. So no reason to get bent out of shape.
Right.
I will say though, I was somewhat aware of this, although not completely aware of this. But holy God, there are a shitload of King Kong movies.
Yeah, there's quite a few. I still don't think it's as many as there are Godzilla movies,
Oh no,
but
not even close.
yeah, but there's still plenty.
Yeah.
It was much easier to take my pick of which King Kong movies I wanted to either watch for the first time or catch up with and rewatch, um, than it will be for when we do Godzilla next week, because that is going to be a fucking chore.
Yeah, there are a few dozen Godzilla movies. I feel like I'm trying to look at my DVD rack and count. So there's like 25.
You said like most of them are on the Criterion channel, right? Or Criterion
A
collection.
lot of the earlier ones. So Godzilla, to kind of take a quick detour here, the Godzilla films have been broken up into a few distinct, I guess, categories or timelines. Not timelines in the sense of like the story, but actual like time frames in history.
Right.
The Showa era, which is the first and most prolific, I guess it would be the way to say it. That era has the most films in it. It lasted from roughly 1954 to 1974 ish, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and that was that. Of course, that's the original, and then the original King Kong versus Godzilla is part of that, and some of the more classic Godzilla films. Not my favorite era, but there's some good ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like
A
50
lot.
something Godzilla movies, I think.
God
I
damn.
honestly don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I've
And
got like 30 of them, and I don't even have half. Like, I barely got half of them, you know?
yeah. But we'll definitely touch more on Godzilla whenever.
Yeah, we'll put a pin in that.
Yeah. But yeah, there's like you said, Ted. There's a lot of Kong films. Too many to name. Too many for us to name. Uh, and go over. Plus, there's no point in going over the movies that we personally haven't seen, because what's
Yeah,
the point in us talking about shit that we haven't actually watched with
right.
our eyeballs?
We're gonna hit the high points basically. So,
Right.
of course, there's the original, the 1933, the granddaddy of them all.
Yep.
David, you mentioned Son of Kong, which was the first sequel when they were like, "Holy shit, we can make money off of this."
Yeah.
The '76 remake you mentioned with
Jeff
Jeff Bridges and his
Bridges.
dreamy eyes.
Oh God. Yeah. I was like, when we'll get into that, but
Yeah, we'll put a pin in that as well.
yeah.
Then, of course, Peter Jackson's 2005 remake, which was pretty divisive, as I recall. I
Mm,
liked it
yeah.
a lot. I saw it on New Year's Eve
Yeah.
a couple weeks after it came out. That was a
Hmm.
fun experience. Skull Island, which we've talked about on the podcast before, and we'll kind of retouch a little bit on this episode. And then, of course, the upcoming Godzilla versus Kong remake or reboot, what have you. But there's been several others. Again, we're not going to cover them, but just like Google King Kong franchise, and you will be probably as surprised as I was. And I like King Kong, and I was like, where the fuck did all these movies come from?
Yeah. The Wikipedia has a page for the King Kong franchise, which has a pretty good. I mean, obviously, it's pretty comprehensive, the list there, and plus they do a pretty good job of breaking each one down and going chronologically and hitting the high notes of each one, and just cultural impacts of each one. And that's kind of another thing with King Kong 2, is like, just like Godzilla had its own kind of like cultural impacts, like King Kong had that as well.
Hmm.
Where You were telling me that uh like the first one kind of came out of the Great Depression and made like a fuck ton of money, right? Like,
Yeah, so the original Kong film, keep in mind this is like $1933, but it played to like sold out theaters
mhm,
during the Depression, which is pretty impressive when you think about it. Um, it's kind of tough to say how much it made on its initial run because theaters and movie going was very different then than it is now. So it's not like now, if you don't make 100 million bucks opening weekend or within the first couple of weeks, like your movie's a failure.
right.
But it made something like
I think it was like 1.5 billion.
adjusted, yeah,
No, no,
yeah.
I think that was in 1933 dollars was like
Oh, holy shit! I know
1.5.
it got re-released several times over the years as well. So like it got
Right.
re-released in like I think it was like 36 or 38, and then it got re-released in like 1962, and then a couple other times because like people just loved it. And again, the movie going experience, the movie watching experience then is very different as compared to now.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
everything comes out on DVD now, or everything's available to stream now. Whereas obviously then they
Yeah.
didn't have streaming for one thing, but they also didn't have like VHS or DVDs like we've had since the 80s, really.
Mhm. Yeah, for all you young heads out there, there was once upon a time a point in existence where the only time you could go see a movie was in the theaters, and
Yeah,
your only hopes of seeing it again was hoping that they re-released it in theaters like they did with King Kong.
either they re-released it in theaters or it was like the Sunday night movie of the week or something.
Hmm.
Um, you know,
You're right.
I've had this conversation with other people, like some of my buddies and their younger siblings, but like it's weird now because it seems like people watch a movie once on Netflix or wherever, and then they just kind of like, yeah, I've seen it, and that's the end of it. Whereas like I remember when I was growing up, like they would replay the same movies because they'd get a contract or something for 3 months and they'd play it like twice a week, and you would like that was what you watched, that was what there was.
Right. Yeah.
um TBS showed First Blood 15 times in a 4-day span, and that's just what you had. um which is obviously that's a little bit of a hyperbole, but
Hmm.
it's very different. So but yeah, I mean, it made a shitload of money, getting back to King Kong, which is pretty crazy. And again, now you look and you're like, oh, $90,000 opening weekend, even adjusted for inflation, that's not too crazy. But you know, um, keep in mind this is again 1933. Nobody's making any money, and it's the height of the depression. So it was a phenomenon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, since we're kind of already on the topic of the first one, you want to talk a little bit about the first one?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, the first one, like we said, it debuted in 1933 in the Great Depression, where everyone was super depressed and no one was making any
No
fucking
happiness
money.
allowed. Yeah.
Yes, no happiness, and it was black and white in real life. Like
Yes.
all the movies there, like and TV show, like those were in black and white, but like life was actually in black and white, like Pleasantville.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's how sad it was. Um, but yeah, it was directed by Marion C. Cooper and Ernest B. Shodasak. I think is how you
Sure.
say it.
No one knows.
Yes, it's a myth. Um, and it had Fay Ray, Robert Armstrong, and Bruce it's I believe it's
Cabot.
Cabot,
Cabot. Yeah.
or he could be like
Bruce
French.
Cabot.
Cabot, yes.
That's Cabot. Yeah.
No, he's American. God damn it. But yeah, so when I what I thought was rewatching, and what I still think is rewatching, I wasn't sure if I actually saw this movie before, and I was like, I I was watching, I was like, God, like I felt like it would come back to me as I was watching it, but I was like, I feel like I hadn't seen this before, but um, I'm pretty sure I saw it in my film class my senior year of high school.
Hmm.
Um, And so yeah, that's kind of where I landed. I definitely officially rewatched it the other day, and um the obvious things aside, like technological advances, um over, almost 100 years ago, and just other things that you just kind of have to give this movie a pass for. Like, I think this movie holds up. um
Yeah,
Ted,
I agree 100%.
yeah, Ted, you texted me. I think you watched it or rewatched it the night after I did, and you texted me about the music, and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
goddamn, like the music is fucking dope.
Yeah, the I mean, it starts with the overture, the classic. I wish movies still did that.
I know
But
it's a lot of fun.
yeah, it starts with the overture, and then of course that fades right into like the theme, and it's just like it really sets the tone well. And then once the movie gets going, and like Kong's theme, and the more like the swells as the action happens, like I feel they really like, man, say what you want about the quote unquote golden age of Hollywood in the 20s, 30s, 40s, etc. But like they had it fucking down when it came to music.
Hmm.
Most scores now are like, they sound like hold music. You know what I mean? Like you call someplace and you're on hold, and that's what a lot of soundtracks now remind me of. But yeah, the score for this is just fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah. So the music's great. Uh, I thought, some of the acting and the way that, like, the script writing, I thought was a little blocky, and I don't know if schlocky is the right word, but like, um just a little rough around the edges. But for the most part, like, I think Fay Ray like stole the fucking show. Like, she was
Yeah,
so
I mean
great, and
she's
yeah,
yeah
she's like so great in her role. And like, the scene that sticks out to me, other than like the classic, like, King Kong coming through the shrubbery, the trees for the first time, and you kind of see him for the first time, and she sees him for the first time, that scream, uh like, that's fucking classic. But the scene that comes to mind for me is when they are sailing to the island on the boat, and they're doing that, the filming on the boat where,
the test shots. Yeah,
right, yeah, the test shots. And so he's kind of given her some direction to, like, start by looking down and then looking up, and he's like giving her more direction, like, you don't know what you're seeing, you're coming to the realization that it's horrifying, and like, and then he gives her the direction to scream, and she just lets out like this blood curdling scream, and you're like,
like this banshee shriek.
right. And I was like, it gave me goosebumps, and like, it's giving me goosebumps now just thinking about it. But like, it was so fucking good.
Yeah, I kind of I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall when they were trying to cast her. Like, okay, Faye, we want you to look pretty and scream a lot. That's it. That's all you have to do.
Right.
And I wish I were joking, but that's pretty much all she does in the whole movie. She does it well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to knock on Faye Ray, because she's classic in this film for a reason. But
Hmm.
I have to imagine it's like, what's my motivation? Terror, and also beauty, but terror.
Right. And
Yeah.
also, that's, without saying, like, that's kind of a sign of the times, right? Is
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
for
there's yeah,
female roles in movies.
yeah. I think you texted me about this a little bit as you were watching it, and you were like, some of this dialogue is questionable at best.
Yeah.
Where they basically allude in the first scene of the film where they're all in the vessel, and he's talking about like, you got to find me a woman for the picture, and he's like, oh, women face more danger in New York, and they're like, yeah, I bet from guys like you. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah. And then like the diner scene where he catches her, like, right after she's like trying to shoplift, from the shoplift the apple from the newsstand or
Mhm.
whatever, and he buys her a cup of coffee or whatever, and he like proposes that she be her leading actor in his movie, and she's like, dude, I just met you like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah. Hey, do
And
you want to come away with me to this mystery island?
right, she's like,
Woman I just met.
right, and she responds basically with, what, I've always wanted to be an actress. And I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I was just getting some like weird, creepy vibes from that.
Yeah.
But
I feel like that's a combination of Sign of the Times and also like she can't say no, otherwise the movie stops. So they had to write it that way, you know. So
right, I did notice. I mean, not to jump the gun and jump to Peter Jackson's Kong film, but I noticed that they did kind of do a little bit of a head nod when Jack Black's character basically does the same thing for Naomi Watts's character, and they redo that scene, but they make it flow a little bit better. So it's like one of the many homages to the original film.
there's a
But
lot of those in the Jackson film, which
yeah,
we'll get to.
right, yeah, but yeah, that's it's just one of those things. But all things aside, I think this movie kicks ass. Um, the claymation I thought like was actually fun to watch. Like, yeah, it's kind of goofy and silly, but it's what they had to work with back then, and all things considered, I think
Yeah.
they did a great job.
It I think a lot of the effects hold up really well.
Right,
You mentioned it, and I agree. If nothing else, this movie is definitely a technical triumph. Um,
right.
it's not the first movie that had a lot of effects or a lot of stop motion effects like that. I mean, like Tyrannosaur came out before this. I think it was before this, and that's a dinosaur movie with a lot of stop motion, and there were other epics certainly before this. King of Kings came out in the first version came out in 1925 or something, I think. So I mean,
Hmm.
Hollywood was making epics, literal epics before this. So this definitely wasn't the first, but I think that this one worked in a way because it's a creature movie. It's a monster movie, so it's got a little more going on with it than just like King of Kings, which is a Bible story, or Ben Hur, which is a Bible story. Nothing against those. I like both of those movies, but this had a broader appeal, I would say.
Right, yeah, for sure. And kind of on that note, we were talking a second ago about some underlying themes that the Godzilla movies have. But this one, King Kong, it's pretty different in terms of like monster movies and the underlying theme it has. And I noticed in your the notes that you added, um, you have man's penchant for cruelty and greed.
Yeah, yeah,
That was actually something that like was at the tip of my tongue, and I just couldn't put it into words, and that's pretty much perfect, I think.
yeah. I think that you can view this movie in a few different ways or through a few different lenses.
Hmm.
I think that's one of them. You could view it as a critique of either or both man's penchant for cruelty and greed, or as a critique of capitalism, in that like it's just about in a lot of the same ways about that cruelty and that greed of like the subjugation of this creature for profit, right?
Hmm.
um Several people throughout the time since this movie was released have said that it's an allegory for colonialism and or fear of race mixing.
Sure.
One famous critic said that, or at least I presume a famous critic, I can't recall their name at the moment, but said that this was basically a movie about the fear of black men taking white women, except in this case, it's not a man; it's a literal ape, which of course is a long held racial
Sure.
thing, very gross racial thing.
Hmm.
The director denied that, and he was like, we didn't have any of that set out. Or that wasn't the point of the film.
Yeah.
What excuse me, what Marion Cooper said is that it's about modernity versus the ancients, and essentially the fact that primitive man will be doomed by modern society. Um, his original idea for the film struck when he was walking through New York and he looked up and imagined an ape on top of the Empire State Building,
Right.
and then kind of worked backwards to step one from there.
Yeah,
Um,
I thought that was a fun little tidbit. I read that as well in the
yeah.
movie trivia. Like, I didn't know any of the backgrounds, like kind of
Mhm.
what you said leading up to that moment, but I did read that in the trivia, and I was like, that's kind of fucking cool. Like a way to come up with a movie premise is to basically.
Sort of reverse engineer it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So, I've talked about this before. on the show. We've talked about this before on the show. I personally don't like to assume intent
Hmm.
on the part of creators unless it's very glaringly obvious. With something like Birth of a Nation, there's not really a second way to view that film.
Hmm.
But I also don't want to take away what anybody else got from it within reason. I mean, obviously, if you were like, King Kong is actually about how space aliens probe my ass, I'd be like, nah, dog, I think you were wrong. But any critique in good faith, I feel like is valid. So
Yeah.
that's my pretentious soapbox for the week.
No, I mean that definitely sounds good, and it makes sense. Um, I yeah, I'd say greed and man's penchant for greed is an accurate assessment on the film. Like, and it
Mm,
is kind of like the underlying theme of all the movies where they go, they arrive at the island either accidentally or on purpose, and they, regardless of whatever happens, like however endangered their lives are through the events of what take place on the island, they still hope to make it off the island with some form of cash making opportunity, right? And,
yeah. Go ahead.
and I was just gonna say, like, and that I think that is a pretty much a constant with all the Kong films is like they get to that moment where getting off the island alive just isn't good enough. Like
It's kind of secondary,
right,
right?
for some of them, like for a lot of
Right.
like the crew, like the quote unquote cannon fodder, like the ones that you don't really get to know that much, like it's good enough for them to get off the island, but for certain other characters, at the top of the casting list, they're still looking to leave with some money making opportunity in their pocket.
Yeah, I mean, Denham says it. He's like, "Oh, now we've got Kong. We're rich boys. We're going to be millionaires."
Right.
And it's like, yeah, dude, you could have died horrifically, like several times.
Right.
So, but again, that just kind of plays up to the penchant for cruelty and greed, like we talked about. Um, we touched on this, and I meant to bring it up then. I should have, but I had a little brain fart there. Been hitting the head too many times. There's one line that really jumped out at me as being like really, really weird. Um,
Hmm.
and it's part of the whole scene where the first mate and Fay Ray's character are quote unquote falling in love, and he's just like, well, I guess I love you. She's just like, but you hate women. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I thought that was really funny. Like,
I don't know if it was intentional comedy or maybe the sign of the times slash
right.
conversation has changed in the last 90 years. But I had forgotten about that, and I was very taken aback by it. I was like, what the fuck? Who's what? Who says that?
Well, I mean, granted, up until that moment, he did do a really good job of giving her the impression that he, more than anyone else on the ship, did not give a
True,
shit about her
true.
and loathed her
Just loathed her
existence.
presence.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, which I mean is a tried and true setup for a budding romance. The
Oh, of
classic
course.
like budding heads blossoms into a either a friendship or a love interest of some sort. So that was
Yeah.
I bought into it a little bit. I thought it was decent enough.
I did think it was kind of funny, and I have to imagine this was intentional. Where towards the start of the film, the director character Denham is talking about nobody cares about good pictures; they want to see romance and da 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 da. Saying, all the critics say, oh, you got to have some kind of romantic subplot, or it's not a good film. And then halfway through the movie, they shoehorn in, this weird conversation about how suddenly I've hated you for the entire 40 minutes up to this point, and now we're in love and we're
Yeah.
engaged.
Right, like uh, within the span of this boat ride and what we went through on the island and then going back, like we decided that we're gonna get fucking married. But hey, what
Yeah.
like the average lifespan was what, like 45 back
12,
then?
12 minutes. Yeah. I guess when you see a bunch of your crewmates horrifically murdered by a giant gorilla creature,
Right.
you take you restock take stock in life in a
Yeah,
different way.
you just fucking shotgun life.
Right. You just from then on you freeball it forever.
Right. I'm gonna freebase the fuck out of life.
Yeah. I don't know. The 33 movie to me um is like almost untouchable. I mean, there's problems
Yeah.
with it for sure. Some of it you can hand wave away as being like, oh well, it was 1933. What do you expect? But it just, man, it's a classic for a reason. Like I
Yeah,
said,
I don't like you said that no one can touch this movie, and I think it will stand the test of time. Like, it should be taught in film school and in like intro, at least intro level film classes and whatnot. So, yeah, you want to talk a little bit about the 1976 remake?
yeah. I personally don't have a lot of thoughts on it. I know you just watched it. I don't know that I've ever seen this whole movie.
Yeah, so this was um, well, aside from Skull Island, which I mean, I watched that what maybe like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, something like that. Um, but out of the whole list, like this was pretty much my first watch, like out of the Kong movies, and it was a lot of fun. Like, we were talking about Jeff Bridges earlier. Like, I was like, man, I don't know who's sexier, like Jeff Bridges or Jessica Lange.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, he's just. I think
That's prime Jeff Bridges, sir.
I know it really it was like it was when him and what's his name from Escape from New York, Kurt Russell,
Kurt Russell,
they
yeah.
they just had that thick, like fluffy.
Luscious mane,
Oh my god! Like I think
piercing eyes.
that's what it comes down to for me. It's
I
just
don't want to
me.
sound gay or nothing, but you know,
Like I I just miss my hair, man, and
it's
like
okay, buddy.
the fact that they have hair, I'm just like, but yeah, he's a good looking dude in this one, and yeah, it was a fun watch. Uh, I didn't take as many notes down for this one as I did for the original. I thought it was an interesting change up. Still kind of keeping on the theme of like greed and like capitalism and stuff. Like they ditched the whole like movie making part of the storyline and replaced it with like we're gonna go mine for oil, which I think is more in
That
tune
was
with like
definitely
the
very
Skull Island.
topical for the 1970s.
Right.
Also,
That was going to be my guess. Like, if I had like 1 or 2 more days to dive into research for this episode, I would have dove more in deep into uh, maybe the reasoning for writing that into the storyline. And
hmm.
that was going to be my guess, was that it was like the whole oil thing was a
Yeah,
bit
the
more
oil crisis
topical.
and everything was, yeah, that was definitely more topical in the 70s.
Yeah. But there's that. And also I found it really interesting that this was pretty much the only Kong movie that I know of. There might be another one that I haven't seen, or just a part of one that I'm not thinking of. But this is the only Kong movie that you get a scene in between them leaving the island, escaping the island, going back to New York, where they're on the boat. Like all the other movies skip that part, which kind of annoyed me because I was like, how the fuck do you get Kong, like keep him sedated and then get him on the boat? Like uh, I just, I mean, granted, none of them actually showed them getting Kong onto the boat. I guess that just isn't as interesting to add into a movie as it is just to kind of make it up in your head how it would happen.
Right.
But it is the only movie, like I said, that I know of that has like a scene back on the boat, and some interaction with Kong. Because she's she's back. They're all back on the boat. They're heading back to New York, and I can't remember if like Kong is making noise or what, but like she goes to see him, like and look at him through like the grate, uh, down below, and like he sees her and basically starts freaking out because like he's angry. He realizes that he's captured, and he's still like pretty sedated. And he starts shaking the boat so much that she ends up falling through the grate, and then you get this really cool scene of like his arm reaching out and like catching her, which granted it's like late 70s um, animation or special effects, so it looks a little blocky, but uh, it was it was still kind of fun to have that the in between scene that I felt was kind of missing
Right.
from some of the other Kong movies.
It's a little grounding.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Doesn't this one kind of climax at the World Trade Center instead of the Empire State Building? Or
I haven't seen the end of this movie,
okay,
so I'm not 100% sure. I would presume so. Like I said, I've only seen bits and pieces of this film,
yeah,
and I don't know that I've seen enough to really even say that I've seen bits and pieces of it, really. But
yeah,
I wouldn't
that's
be
fair.
surprised.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like the first one took place at the Empire State Building, right?
Right, which was at the time, I believe, the tallest building in the world.
Right. Um. So yeah, and then the World Trade Center wasn't built by then, or wasn't built at that point, right?
Right, so I would assume that in the 70s it would have been the tallest building in the world, so they might have updated it for that.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, that was another little difference between the original and this remake. So um, yeah, we can jump ahead, Ted, unless you have any other thoughts you want to add. I mean, it's cool if you
Nope.
don't. Like you said, you
Jeff Bridges, very dreamy. Moving on.
yeah,
The 2005 Peter Jackson remake. Like I said at the top of the show, I feel like I remember this one being pretty divisive, where a lot of people really liked it and a lot of people really didn't like it for various reasons.
yeah,
I personally, I felt it was unnecessary. I mean, I like Peter Jackson as a director. He's up until like 2008 when he gave up, he was a very good director. um, but I was one of those films where I was like, we don't, it doesn't need a remake though. It's already got a really good version. Like,
yeah,
um, yeah, but I mean, I like it. I think I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's very good.
yeah. So I think this was the first time I revisited the movie since I saw it the first time in theaters back in
Mhm.
2005. And I I didn't know that there was an unedited or director's cut version out there. But when I saw it, I was like, why not? And then I saw the runtime; it was like 3 hours and 10 minutes, and I was like, well, there's no
Yeah,
turning back now.
the movie's like almost 3 hours on its own,
Yeah,
and then there's like, we're gonna do the Lord of the Rings thing and extend it. Fuck you.
yeah. So say what you will about the long run time. I get it, but what I think this movie kind of benefits from with its long runtime is the ability to elaborate a little bit more on those moments in, especially the original, that they could only touch on for a minute or two before moving on, because I don't know, I think just the average runtime of a movie back then just wasn't as long. Um, so now we have the added benefit of being able to spend a little bit more time. So like the diner scene between Jack Black's character and Naomi Watts, like that's a little bit more in depth, and you have a little bit more context of him proposing the idea to her of, hey, you want to be the lead in my movie. um, and you also like him being not like a failed director, but like someone who's about to miss out or lose his like last shot at making a movie. You you really understand his motivation for just not wanting to give up on making a movie. Like, yeah, I can't tell you how many fucking times they almost die on the island, but he's like so determined to hold on to his camera, uh,
Yeah,
and shoot this damn movie. And then when that goes out the window, of course, he has the idea to sedate Kong with the chloroform, kind of like what they did with. Uh, I think that was in the '70s remake, and um, yeah, and then bring him back to
Yeah,
New
it's
York.
gas bombs in the 30s.
Yeah, that's right. Um, but yeah, Andy Serkis, he played the gorilla. He did the mocap for that, and of course, he
Hmm.
has a long running history with mocap stuff. Like he played Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and I say long running history, and then all the other instances of him playing mocap
didn't he
stuff eludes my memory.
didn't he play Caesar in the
Yes,
Planet of the
yes,
Apes
yep,
remakes too?
he did.
Reboots? Yeah.
Um, and
I mean, he's done stuff where he's not a mocap actor, but I think that's probably what he's most famous for.
Right. And he had a role in this movie. Like not only did he played three roles. Like he played
Earning
Kong,
that paycheck.
right? He played Kong twice, and then he played like a member of the crew. I can't remember what his name was in the crew. I think he had a missing eye and just didn't have an eye patch.
Dope.
But I know, right? You're just like, fuck that eye patch for pansies.
That's tough.
Yeah, but so I read in the trivia that they had to film the Kong stuff twice. Like the first was him like with Naomi Watts, so she had someone to react to or something to react to, and then the second time was when they wrapped production, and then they had to go back and like do more mocap stuff and more like sound effects and stuff like that in studio. Uh, so yeah, like you said, just fucking earning that paycheck.
Earning that check. Yeah. But I mean, he did an awesome job. I think you hit the nail on the head that this is, I think, out of all the films that have been released thus far in the King mythology, the King Kong mythology, rather. I think this does the best job of inspiring empathy for
Yeah.
King Kong, and I
Hmm.
think a lot of that is because we get a lot of very good um, facial ticks and movement from the mocap.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's that's definitely one thing that the progression of technology has afforded this movie is it's just like you said, the ability to get more facial stuff out of the the CG and whatnot. And plus, like I said at the beginning, with that added time, we have the ability to get more elaborate scenes and just more scenes in general um, with Naomi Watson and Kong. Like, I thought it was amazing and just so endearing, the scene where like it's kind of like the first scene that they have together where they're not being attacked by other monsters and creatures, where oh yeah, it's where she like tries to run away and he's like pissed, and so she's like doing her little vaudeville dances and like pretending
Hmm.
to fall down, and he like starts cracking up and he starts like pushing her down with his finger and stuff. I thought was a lot of fun. But um yeah, there was that. And one little trivia tidbit I found that was pretty interesting was there's an infamous part of the original that was cut out by the director himself. Like, he wasn't told to cut it. He made the executive decision, and it was there's like consistencies with every Kong film. Or there's the ones that the original did, and then all the others kind of with their head nods to the original. And one of those
Hmm.
is the infamous giant tree trunk, or just tree, I guess, that acts as a bridge between the two land masses.
Right.
And the people are trying to cross it, get away from Kong, and he takes the tree trunk and like
Yeets them into the canyon.
basically, yeah, right, where he's like shaking the tree trunk and like trying to shake them off, and a lot of them end up falling down, and some survive, some don't. But in the original, he shakes them off, and there's a scene where the people that survive the fall, there's these giant fucking spiders that come out of nowhere and just fucking eat those people. And they were showing that to test audiences back before the movie was released in 1933, and like people were just terrified, like they had never seen anything fucking like this in their entire lives. And he was like, well, we should probably take this out.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because when I saw this in theaters, like I said, I saw it on New Year's Eve with some friends at the time, and they all like had the same reaction to Jackson's version because it has that scene where they
Right.
fall in and there's like the insects attacking them,
Hmm.
and they were just like, oh fuck, and like left the theater and then came back in a couple of times to see if it was over with yet, and I
Oh
was like,
wow.
sissies, yeah.
I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that where
Yeah.
people, at least not that I know. I mean, it's probably happened and I just didn't notice it, but yeah, that was definitely a head nod to the original. Is
Mhm.
uh, Jackson wanted to include that scene kind of as a head nod to the OG and how he had to take it out, and he was like, "All right, I'll throw it in there,"
Mhm.
as a callback.
I think there's well, I don't think I know. There's a lot of nods and homages in this film to the original in particular,
Hmm.
and not just to the original film, but also to the original cast and crew. There's a part where they're talking about trying to get a woman for the picture, and they end up getting Naomi Watts, and they're just like, well, what about Faye Ray? Well, I think the exact line is like, what about Faye? Oh, well, she's doing a picture with RKO, which is obviously that's a nod to Faye Ray. RKO is who released the original Kong, and then
Right.
I believe it's Denham who says like, she's doing something with Marion. I should have known, of course, which is a reference to the original director.
Right.
Um, there's a lot of stuff like that. I mean, Peter Jackson is like king of the nerds, basically, in a positive way. I don't mean that as a slight. You know, he's
Right.
like basically the nerd king at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, there is I noticed a lot of like meta head nods in when I rewatched it yesterday and today, cuz it's
Very
like
long film.
3.5 hours, had to split it up over, 2 days. But there was one other thing that I wanted to mention, and it just slipped my mind. Um, yeah, yeah. Ted, do you have any other thoughts on the Peter Jackson remake, reboot, whatever you
Um,
want to call it?
no, I mean, I think it's a good movie. I think it's flawed in a lot of ways, but I still think it's a very good film and
Sure.
definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's definitely worth a watch, at least a once over. Yeah, you want to jump into some Skull Island to round this bitch off?
Yes,
Cool. So yeah, Skull Island, which was our highest voted Kong movie in the Facebook poll, um, by Mr. Director Jordan Vought Roberts. I don't know how you say
no one
his
knows
last
it's
name.
provocative. Yeah, this is a weird one. Like I said, I had a lot of fun with the movie, but I also kind of think that the best part of the movie is its poster
Okay.
because it has a fucking dope poster.
It does have a dope poster.
The Apocalypse Now rip. I like that a lot. Um, I do agree with your thoughts. We talked about this a little bit, and then I see it in your notes here. It's I think it's a good idea. I agree that it's a good idea to go with a different storyline than just rather than just reboot the same King Kong movie we've seen,
Yeah.
3 or 4 times and at least talked about 3 times already on the show.
And,
Um,
and plus it makes sense since they're building the, quote unquote monster verse. Like it
yeah, 100%,
didn't really
100%.
fit that narrative if
Hmm.
their play was to eventually bring in Godzilla.
Plus John Goodman,
Yes,
nothing wrong with that.
absolutely not.
Um, I I will say though, I think that some of the characters in this movie I just actively hate. Um,
It Yeah, that's a actually a comment from the director. He was like, "Yeah, there's too many actors in this."
um, I feel like I spent a large portion of the movie being like, why are Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson here? Like, why are their characters here? I have nothing against Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson as people. I just why are their characters here? Like, I would have much rather seen the movie where it was just John Goodman's character, Samuel L. Jackson's character, and the rest of the soldiers, and then um, John C. Riley's like shipwrecked or plane wrecked guy.
Yeah.
That's a personal complaint though, and like I said, I still had a lot of fun with the movie. I think that there are a lot of awesome pieces of this movie that don't necessarily add up to an awesome whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Is the best line, of course, in the movie is that a monkey?
Is that a monkey? Yeah, that's one of my favorite lines in movie history. I will admit. I
Yeah.
do think that there's some the good outweighs the bad though. I don't just want to shit on this movie because, like I said, I had a lot of fun with it. I liked it a lot
Yeah.
when I saw it. I think the skull crawlers are fucking dope. That is probably the
Oh
high
yeah.
point of this movie for me.
Yeah, yeah, those were fucking creepy as hell.
Yeah.
And but yeah, and that was with oh yeah, that was the other thing I wanted to touch on. The other consistence and head nods is um you know other than like the tree trunk thing, like that was one thing that Kong always does with like the snapping prey, right? Like he takes their jaws and like just fucking breaks the jaws, like rips their mouth
Yes.
open. Like
Yes.
it's fucking iconic, like, and it's so good. Like every time you see it, you're just like, yeah, like, like you just rips the
Yeah.
jaw open, and like I think in Peter Jackson's movie, like he actually rips his tongue out with his mouth. I was like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
Yeah.
um,
It's really great in the 33 version because you can see the like the clay blood, and I had
yeah.
forgotten that when I was rewatching. I was like, damn, they really went for it. Like,
Oh yeah. And
fuck the
like,
Hays Code.
right. And the fact that like they uh, when it's dead, when Kong is like checking to make sure that it's dead, like he's picking up its head and like dropping it a few times, just like,
Mhm.
not, I don't think it's necessarily like adding insult to injury, or kicking a horse while it's down, so to speak, but it's just one of those things that I guess that you do as a giant animal in the jungle, is you make sure that your prey is dead,
Yeah.
or your attacker is dead before you turn your back on it.
Sure. One other thing about this movie that I like that I think works, given, well, it has to, given the context of the MonsterVerse, but I think it works within this film itself as well in Skull Island, is that they really make it a point to say that Kong is not fully grown or not fully developed.
Right.
Obviously, Kong, much like Godzilla, has grown over the years in different iterations. And the original, I mean, you look at him and he's huge, certainly, but he's not like 100 feet tall. I think he's like 30 feet tall or something, basically.
Yeah.
At one point, when he's back in New York, he's staring into like the third floor of a building, which
Hmm.
is not, freakish. I mean, it's huge, obviously, but it's not like huge, monstrous.
Right.
And then in Skull Island, he's bigger, and they say, well, he's going to get even bigger, which is, of course, he has to because he's going to fight Godzilla in a couple of years, and Godzilla's fucking a nuclear goddamn dinosaur. So.
Yeah.
But I did like it. I mean, it's exposition, and sometimes expositions can be a little eye rolly and cringe inducing, but I think that they did a good job of putting it in there and then making it also make sense within the
Hmm.
greater context of the film.
Yeah, one thing that I really appreciated about this movie, you said, like, you mentioned the thing about Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson, their characters, like, why are they here? And I think that's fair. Like, I think that's just that's also just a fair assessment on the movie as a whole. Like, there's just too many people in it. Um, I think maybe he did that uh, as a way to have like some cannon fodder,
So
just some
maybe.
people to get rid of. Um, but also, like, I was reading that uh, that Brie Larson took the role because she appreciated the direction they wanted to take with, like, I don't know what they call the prototypical like maybe like Kong Girl or whatever, the girl that's in every King Kong movie, that's the damsel in
Right.
distress. But that's not the
Yeah.
case with this movie. She's like the badass. She's basically like the Jane Goodall of the Kong universe, right? I mean, like she goes there and
That's
like,
good.
she's not really like terrified of it, and she wants to learn more, and she's the conservationist. And um and also I'm just a fan of Brie Larson. Like I like
Yeah.
her. I
I,
like her as an actor, and I typically like the characters she plays. And so
I will say that it was a bit more forward thinking rendition of
yeah,
how women have been portrayed historically in King Kong movies. Like I said, there are a lot of very fair criticisms you could point to in the Kong films, and I think that's definitely one of them.
yeah, for sure. And just kind of going back to some earlier points, like it's also just a sign of the times. Not like that's necessarily an excuse per se, but that's that was the role that women were cast as in a lot of movies, especially these kinds of movies, is the
Hmm.
damsel in distress. But especially this being like a period piece, taking place in like the 60s or 70s, like
Yeah,
the
late
Vietnam
'60s or early
area.
'70s. Yeah.
um they casting uh, a female role for that role, I think was a wise choice. And just having a strong female character in a Kong movie was definitely overdue, well overdue. Um, so yeah, but yeah, I really don't have too much else to talk about Kong Skull Island. I know that we've touched on it
Hmm.
at least a couple times before now. I think it was my shit that doesn't suck several weeks ago, and I know that we talked about it a fair amount then. So yeah,
All right. Speaking of shit that doesn't suck, David, I think we should probably hit that segment and then put this one to bed before we bore our listeners to death.
that's fair.
Yeah, so I will go ahead and go first and knock mine out. The Criterion channel, has had a curated selection recently over the last couple of months called New Korean Cinema. I think
Hmm.
it's basically a curated list of pretty popular as well as important films from Korean directors over the last 20 to 25 years, roughly. Hence the new, right? So I've been going through it. I'd seen some of the films that were a part of this list. I mean, some of the the usual suspects, you might say,
Hmm.
were on there. Um, One that I hadn't seen that I'd always heard about, from director Park Chan Wook, who is probably most famous for the Vengeance trilogy, which includes Old Boy, which I would say is probably his most famous film.
Sure.
The movie of his that I watched that I had not seen but had come heavily recommended is called Joint Security Area. It's
Whoa.
a mystery. It's a mystery movie of sorts, um, set along the DMZ between North and South Korea.
Hmm.
Um, there is an incident, so they bring in some neutral parties to investigate, and it kind of spirals from there. It's very good, very, very good film. I cannot recommend it enough. It's called Joint Security Area.
It sounds fucking hardcore just by the title.
Yeah, if you've ever seen any of Park Chan Wook's films, he has a penchant for brutality, I would
Mm,
say,
yes.
but not without purpose. It's not just violence for the sake of violence,
Right.
which I'm not against. I mean, I like goofy, bloody action movies, but his always serves a greater purpose or a greater theme.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and if you've ever seen Old Boy, you know exactly what we're
Yes,
talking
which
about.
oh boy, fucking rules.
Yeah.
That really should have been my shit that doesn't suck, but I haven't watched it in a while, so I went with this one.
Yeah, I saw that one once, and I was like, man, it's going to be a while before I'm able to revisit this because my
Yeah,
head just
you
exploded.
do not forget that movie after you've seen it.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'll definitely have to add that to my list. You said it was on they added it to the Criterion channel or streaming
Yeah,
service.
it's on the Criterion channel, which is their streaming service, $10 a month, and they have in my opinion, a better selection than Netflix,
Okay.
of a lot of different stuff. the curated lists, like this new Korean cinema, as well as they had one for 70s horror around last Halloween.
Oh, dope.
They put out different stuff like February. Their big push was for like black voices and black filmmakers.
Sure.
For March, which is Women's History Month, they're doing a lot of spotlights on like female empowered cinema, as well as cinema written and directed and produced by women.
Hmm.
So they do a lot of theme stuff like that, as well as, I mean, all not all the movies, but a lot of movies that are in their collection are available to stream, as well as some other movies that are not part of the quote unquote Criterion collection, but are available to stream on the channel. So it's $10 well spent, in my opinion. I was a Charter subscriber, and I'm gonna probably be a subscriber until they either cancel the service or I drop dead. So
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Speaking of female empowerment and black mixture of Black History Month and women's what did she say it was women's
Women's History Month.
sure, yeah. um the director Nia DaCosta, who did the Candyman remake or reboot or whatever, she was
Mhm.
just tapped to do Captain Marvel 2, which is pretty exciting. So um that was news that just broke like yesterday, the day before, so that's pretty cool. All right, so for my shit that doesn't suck, I'm gonna do something a little different. I've only done music and albums once or twice, but since my movie watching here for the last week or so has basically just been straight up King Kong, and we just talked about King Kong, that's kind of off limits. So I'm doing music, and I have been listening to the fuck out of Dance Gavin Dance's live album, the Tree City Sessions 2. It's kind of sort of live. They recorded it it was when they were going to when they planned on doing it initially, they were going to do it live like Tree City Sessions 1, the original, but they then COVID happened, but they still wanted to do it and release it as an album. So they what they did was like they set up in a recording studio, but they all played together as a band from start to finish. So they basically played like a whole set with no breaks in between. So they have like the transition music that they use in their live performances, they actually used on the album too. So it's just like a super fun album to listen to, and plus you get to hear like the new clean vocalist that's been around for the last couple albums, Tillian. You get to hear him do past songs that were sung by like Johnny Craig and the other clean vocalists that had been around. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, like I said, I've been listening to the shit out of that album. It'll probably end up being like, at the Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year. Like it'll probably be my like most listened to album for the year. So
Well,
yeah, it's been my soundtrack while I craft and make all these tumblers. And if you've been following me on social media, you know that I've been doing a shit ton of crafting as well. So which is all available on our Etsy shop, which is a great segue into
into our closing spiel.
yeah,
Yeah, that is Etsy Geek Garage Creations, right?
Geek Garage Gear. It was
Geek
Geek
Garage
Garage.
Gear, excuse me.
It was Geek Garage Creations, and then we were like, "Hey, there's alliteration in Geek Garage Gear," so we
Yeah.
chose that one.
All right, so Geek Garage Gear on Etsy. Of course, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, which we never use, Instagram. Just search for Geek Garage. All that is in the show notes,
Yep.
as well as geekgaragepodcast.com. If you would like, if you like what you've heard, why would you? But if you do, for some reason, give us a like and a subscription. You
Rate.
can also give us bad reviews, but none of this middle of the road fence walking bullshit you commit. By God. That's all free. If you feel so inclined to throw us a few doll hairs, we do have a Patreon. Tiers start as low as $2, and there's a $5 tier also. That's for the big spenders out there.
Yeah.
Get you a lot of cool perks like an exclusive button and sticker combo that David will send to you, should you be so inclined. We promise it doesn't have COVID germs on it.
Right.
As well as doing some things like an exclusive group on Facebook and perks like helping us program the show. That doesn't sound like a perk, but it is. You get to choose what we talk about.
Yeah.
And we'll maybe do the research for it. Possibly. Probably not though, but we'll see.
Yeah, like the Avengers Bracket Brawl. If you are part of our Facebook group, that's a thing that we've been doing for March because March Madness and all that. The fine folks of our Patreon team, we haven't come up with a snappy name for it yet, but that's also on the to-do list.
The Geek
Uh,
Garage Gatreons. That's not gonna work.
That's pretty funny. But yeah, they helped us come up with that idea, and it's been going pretty gangbusters. I think a lot of people have been having fun with it. A lot of people are upset. They're like, I refuse to participate because, like, one of the first seeds was Iron Man against Black Panther, and that one stung a little bit for a few people. I
Yeah.
mean, it just stings in general, but yeah. Um, but yeah, you do get to just help us decide on future content, like Ted said, and future episodes and other fun, engaging things that we do with the rest of the audience. So get to be a part of that. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode, folks. And as always, be kind, stay geeky, and eat lots of cheesecake. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.